Welcome to transmission number 51 today with Christopher Franco from Expanse. Thanks for coming on today.
Oh, man, thank you for having me.
Great. And before we begin, I want to give a thanks out to our sponsors for this episode, ecoin.io. Check them out. You can get a virtual credit card or a physical credit card based in Bitcoin. So that's pretty cool. Definitely check out ecoin.io. And now to Expanse. So Expanse is an altcoin that is a fork of Ethereum. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much right.
Okay, great. Well, before we get really deep into that, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into Bitcoin, and what are your past projects before Expanse?
Man, how did I get into Bitcoin? Well, I've been a software engineer for a really long time, and I got into Bitcoin because I seen people around. There were other software engineers also talking about it as being a programmable form of money, and so it felt right. So right now I'm the lead developer of Expanse, but before Expanse, I worked on Franco. I've worked on TechCoin, Ribbit Rewards, the world's first incentive program for cashback rewards. Okay, so and then I also worked on Aiden, which was a proof of concept for something called ScriptOG, and I've helped out a ton of others. I joined Bitcoin Talk in March 2013, I think. No, hell, 2011. Wow, it's been a long time. And yeah, it's pretty much what I've done, where I've been.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, now a lot of people are talking about Expanse because it's a new thing, and there's not very many forks of Ethereum yet. But what about Franco? Is Franco dead?
I mean, that's a really valid question, and it makes you wonder. How do we define death in cryptocurrency? Can a cryptocurrency actually die? I mean, I think the only way a crypto can die is if all the nodes go down at once and every copy of the blockchain is deleted. So, I mean, if we use that definition, then Franco's not dead. Franco doesn't have tons of volume, but I'm also still, I'm still going to support Franco. It's not like it's just because I have Expanse, I'm going to get rid of it. That would be like saying, when the iPad came out, Apple didn't stop making iPhones. It's a new product, and Expanse can do things that Franco can't do easily, like create a decentralized autonomous organization.
All right, great. Okay, while we're on the topic of altcoins in general and altcoins dying, what do you think the future is for altcoins in general? And I like your definition of a true death. I mean, no nodes and no nothing. But how many? I don't think there's an official count, or how many altcoins have really gone through a total death like that, if any. And what do you think the future holds for a lot of altcoins, especially ones that were created, let's say, post Dogecoin, where there was a big, amount of coins being churned out in 2014, I would say. What do you think is the future for all? A slow death, or back to relevance, or were they ever relevant?
I mean, I guess that's also another hard question. I mean, so how many have actually died? Probably countless. I mean, I've made proof of concepts that I didn't release and only had it on 2 nodes and deleted the blockchain. I mean, are we going to count those in, or are we going to count ones that actually went public with services and saying, "Hey, we're going to be this cryptocurrency"?
No, I mean public, but yeah, I get what you mean.
Public ones. Probably. That goes back to what's the definition? Cryptocurrency by definition or by implementation is almost immortal. I mean, as long as somebody has a copy of the blockchain, all they have to do is boot it up and append blocks onto the original blockchain, and then it is no longer dead or sleeping. It wakes up and now becomes functional again. So are we going to have this slow decline of people not using altcoins? I mean, possibly, but I mean, at the same time, at any moment in time, a new influx of users can come in. It's kind of up to us. And I think one thing that kind of irritates me is how hostile most of the cryptocurrency community is towards each other. So imagine if somebody new is coming into the space and all of a sudden they see us bickering at each other, or, calling this one a scam and this one a scam when really they're just not much different. It's like, it's not a healthy environment. I think that can change though. We can work together and we can release new services and introduce new people into the atmosphere. And once we do that, then it's, back on a steady uptrend. So it's like, are they relevant? I think so. I mean, Bitcoin paved that way to allow for alternative currencies and competition. That's why it's open source, and this is what we can do. We can again work together and bring life back into the system. There has been a steady dump. I mean, most of the markets have been dumping on most of the altcoins, but I think that that usually happens anytime Bitcoin starts to go up. Hell, anytime Bitcoin moves, it can go up or down, and then people are trying to dump altcoins for Bitcoin so they can either make their next move. So we have a lot of speculators now. If we can increase utilization, that would be how to get new people in, make it easier for people to use it. That's another step. Like, for instance, that's one goal for Expanse. Ethereum came out with a frontier, and it's cool, but it's also incredibly difficult to use. So if we can, again, as a community, make it to where grandma can use it, then we're on the step to the right direction to going back up. And that can happen again at any moment.
All right, that's good answer. Very interesting. I think it's an ongoing discussion that needs to be had, and I do agree with the as far as the hostile thing. It does get kind of hostile just in general. And okay, well, let's talk about Expanse because that's the new thing. Now, I don't know if people. I'm not going to say I'm an Ethereum expert. I'm not at all. But the way I understand it is that I could launch a coin in Ethereum anyway. So why do I need to fork Ethereum if I can already launch a coin in Ethereum? It was just something I was pondering. I thought that was kind of some of the ideas that, when I heard guys from Ethereum speak, they're like, oh, you won't even need to do that anymore. You can just do it all in Ethereum, and you can even do proof of work, and it sounds really easy. Now, I haven't really seen it come out yet. So instead of doing that, you guys have actually just forked it and said, okay, forget that. We're just going to do our own chain, but with the Ethereum code. Tell us about the decision. What made you want to do that, and why you didn't just go for doing on Ethereum?
Yeah, of course. Well, the main reason that we chose to fork Ethereum and not actually build, because you can build currency contracts into Ethereum. But, I mean, there isn't really much of an incentive for us to do that. If I don't have a lot of, Ethereum, building an Ethereum asset, which was kind of what it would be like. Building assets on Ethereum is kind of like creating colored coins on Bitcoin. So it's very similar, but you're not actually creating, I don't know, it's definitions, but.
Okay, great. So you mean it's more of a token system rather than okay.
That's right. So we can actually, with Expanse, we can have different things, like we can build into our DAO system, our ternary DAO or 3-division DAO, which is like something that was a little harder for us to do on Ethereum for a multitude of reasons, but mostly because now we don't own it, but we mandate the variables that are in our chain. You see, that's basically the main reason somebody would want to fork the project versus just building on top of Ethereum.
All right, well, let's go there first. So you mean that you can mandate things like block size limit? That's a big debate in Bitcoin, for example, or block time, or give us an example of some of the other things that you can tweak out that you could do differently. I don't know the block time in Ethereum. I do know that the exchanges need a whole lot of confirmations to go from one exchange to another, but I think that's because it's a new chain or something. But
it's a new chain and we can reorganize.
Okay.
But so one of the things that we changed was the gas limit. The gas is pretty much the ether that it takes in order to run an application on the shared virtual machine that is Ethereum or is Expanse. And in Expanse, you can create an application or a smart contract that can do 100 times more iterations than you can in Ethereum. And because we have a larger gas limit, we also have implemented a longer block time, which was kind of controversial. I mean, Vitalik said that you didn't need to do that, and it kind of ruined the purpose of Ethereum being a very real-time virtual machine. But my experience from running other altcoins, like for instance Franco, that if under a minute you started having tons and tons of orphans and tons of wasted mining. And with Expanse, it has something called Ghost, and Ghost will take into consideration the orphans and stuff that you have, and makes your chain ultimately more secure. But the amount of orphans that get calculated into Ghost are limited by Ethereum, and so you can fill that uncle, they call the uncle, which is a fun word for orphan, and so you can fill that up, and then all of a sudden you're wasting electricity, you're wasting space, or
great,
wasting computations.
All right, for our viewers and listeners that really don't have any idea what uncles and orphans and stuff like that is, could you just give us, I think just the orphan is a good thing to explain. Just tell us what is an orphan. I mean, that happens in altcoins when they're
pretty much. Pretty much basically what an orphan is like, say you and I are searching for the solution to a block. We're both working at pretty much the same speed, and I put more work into my block, but we find our blocks at the same time. Your block is valid and my block is also valid, but because my block has more work in it, your block gets what they call orphaned, meaning they pretty much, even if you're found first, sometimes what will happen is, or it's mostly relatively the same time, my block will be have more weight or more work to it, so it makes your block sort of invalid. Not necessarily invalid, but more like it doesn't count towards the next block. But Ghost,
yours was longer. Sorry to interrupt you, but you mean that yours became longer and mine became shorter. Is that correct?
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
Well, longer as in it took more work to complete that block than it did the block that you made, even if they are both relatively similar.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and go on to Ghost then, now that we have that context.
Yeah, so pretty much what Ghost does is, even if you're going up the chain and we find two blocks that are relatively similar and my block goes up, in order to keep security, we can also include this block over here that's in the chain. What would be an orphan in Bitcoin, we can actually use that for the calculation of the next block. So you can also use ones that would be orphans, and now instead of having always like the longest chain, it is always going to be the longest chain with the most work, because you're also including all the wasted or orphan blocks also. That's how Ghost works.
Well, that sounds pretty far out. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
So is that more efficient because you're wasting less, or does that not really come into the equation? I mean, it sounds like...
I guess you could definitely say that you're more efficient, and not only more efficient, but you're definitely more secure, because you're including all the work that everybody's done. But I guess like the main difference between Ethereum and Expanse is Ethereum has like a 13-second block time, so they have a lot more orphans and a lot more uncles, or they're forking a lot more. I'm not going to say fork because that kind of has a bad connotation, but that's essentially what it is. They're every 13 seconds they're finding a block and they're coming up to a decision, and it could be say there's a limit of 5 uncles. It could be any one of these 5 blocks, and say it's the block 1, it goes over here, but these are still valid blocks. They just get included into the Ghost calculation. And then, but say there's a limit. So what if somebody finds 10 blocks in that time? The other 5 are wasted mining. And so, and the reason it happens more with Ethereum than it does Expanse is because Ethereum has such a quick block time of like 13 seconds. On average, it takes about 13 seconds for a block to propagate throughout the network.
Okay.
And with the Expanse, we have a minute block time, so we have a lot more time to propagate, which means that we're not going to have near as many orphans or uncles, or So all of the work that is going into an Expanse block is a little more efficiently done because we don't have as much waste and as many people, submitting uncles, or that's
Okay,
basically.
great. All right. Well, tell us about how the Expanse organization is organized. So I believe you've created a DAO, which is a decentralized, autonomous organization, and that kind of runs the coin with the work, the dev work, and so on. So just explain what that is, how it works, and how we know that you're not gaming it, basically.
Yeah. Okay, so pretty much a decentralized autonomous organization is a lot of big words that, with a lot of letters that pretty much mean an organization whose bylaws are coded into existence rather than penned and notarized. See, our DAO bylaws can't be broken. In our case, our DAO monitors and enacts the spending of our reserve, which adds a new method to earning tokens. So Satoshi gave us proof of work. Then Sonny King and his team created proof of stake, and we're pretty much creating like a proof of participation. So if you participate in the democratic process, you can either earn tokens, which would be, in this case, Expanse from our DAO, but you also get a say in how our organization is run. Right now, we're still in the white paper stage of the DAO. We haven't completely coded it yet because there's so many like little details that if you mess up could potentially be catastrophic in the end. And so,
okay. Sorry, I just want to ask a quick question. So how do I participate? Is it how many Expanse coins I own is the weight of my vote, or how do I, take part in that organization? How does that work, and how do I get voted to a seat or a position in the organization? How does that all work?
Yeah. Okay. So right now we have three divisions. We have the founders, we have the board of directors, and the shareholders, which is sort of how kind of any company works, or any corporation. So shareholders they can nominate board of directors, and so can founders, and then they would vote on using again their shares, like you were saying, to vote on the matter. So for instance, say you wanted to become a board of director, you would either have to be nominated by the shareholders or nominated by one of the founders, and then all three divisions would have to vote on it, whether you got in there or not. But let's kind of extrapolate that to something else. So all right, let's talk about what if you wanted to create a let's see, some sort of widget that takes Expanse, and you're a widget designer, so you're good at this. You can petition the shareholders and create a vote that says, hey, I would like 1,000 Expanse for my widget. It would create a vote in the DAO, which would then, if the shareholders contract had a balance of 1,000, they could vote independently of the other two divisions and say, yes, you can make this widget for us. But let's say that for some reason, there's no balance in the shareholders contract. They could petition the parent contract, which is like the overall organizational DAO system. And so whenever a child petitions its parent for an allowance, it creates a vote between the other two siblings, which would be the founder division and the board of directors division. Then it has to create a 2 of 3 consensus on whether, so one of the other children have to say that the shareholder spending is legit. And
all right,
we also have.
I have a quick question. That sounds really good. That sounds really great. Can you give us an example of something that you've actually executed so far, or if you have so far, using that model where, I don't know, there was a proposal or a question, what to do, and someone did something with the shares, or what was it again? The shareholders said something, the founder said something, and so on. You guys made a decision using this format.
Yeah. Well, currently right now, because there's only so few of us, our community is really small, we can kind of delegate our decisions outside of the DAO system. That's how we've been operating right now, because the DAO contract it's not enacted yet. So we're still drafting this process, and we're still, constantly coming up with the best way to do it. So we haven't got an example yet, but we are definitely working towards it, and our white paper should be out fairly soon. That outlines how to do all of this stuff with nice graphs and pictures and to-dos and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, great. That's cool. So you're really taking time to, even though so Expanse exists, you can buy it, you can sell it, you can send it on the blockchain, you can do smart contracts, but there's going to become, this DAO is going to come into existence that kind of manages the coin. Now in other coins, it's off chain normally. It's not anything. It's, like a Bitcoin core development or other coins have the similar thing where it doesn't have anything to do with the smart contract. So you guys want to do that aspect on it on using smart contracts, right?
Yes, of course, because smart contracts are transparent. We can monitor all the spending. It also becomes a democratic process where everybody that is a member of the community or organization as a shareholder has a say in the future of how these funds get spent. And I mean, it keeps everybody honest. Transparency keeps people honest.
Okay, great.
And well, that's what we want.
Well, just like DAO, smart contract is a word that's been thrown around a whole lot lately. And I think that, well, actually, I just want to ask you, what is a smart contract?
I actually wrote down a pretty fancy definition, okay, but I mean, so what are smart contracts? Smart contracts are computer protocols that facilitate, verify, or enforce the negotiation or performance of a contract, or that obviate the need for a contractual clause. But I mean, in simple terms, it's pretty much just an application that lives on the blockchain for Expanse or Ethereum or any other thing. But it's just an application that takes in data and returns other data that can do they self-fulfill themselves.
Okay, great. Well, well, just to discuss that point a little bit, I was under the impression that a lot of smart contracts need a third party, like for example, an Oracle. The Oracle provides the data feed and says, yes, that is true, or no, that's not true. And then the other two parties, agreed on that data feed beforehand that is the Oracle. Now, do you always need a kind of Oracle, or can you make some contracts that only require two parties?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. And to answer it pretty plainly, you don't always need a third party or a smart Oracle or any kind of centralized trust. I mean, that's kind of depending on your contract. Now, for instance, if your contract takes Franco transactions, for instance, and it has to verify Franco transactions, you're going to have to trust the third-party source where it's coming from. Or, for instance, say, you make a contract where every time the weather gets above 90 degrees, it does this one action, else it does another action. It would need some sort of person feeding in that data. But there's other contracts that you can make that don't need that sort of data. That, on every 10th block, it releases 5 Expanse to 100 addresses. That's completely independent because that only depends on data that's already in the blockchain. So you don't always need it, but sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It all depends on the scope of your contract.
So you mean the Expanse blockchain doesn't know the temperature, so you have to tell,
Yeah, you would have to tell it.
Right, but it would know, what block you're at or some other variables, and you could base some contracts on the variables that the blockchain would already know. Then you don't need a third person, theoretically. Yes, okay, all right, that's really interesting. Well, you brought up Franco again, and I was just thinking, I think it's been brought up before on some projects, and on maybe on side chains and that kind of thing, but can the Expanse blockchain interact with other blockchains, some kind of cross-chain connection? I think there's some special names for that.
Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't. I've actually came up with a really cool contract that, I mean, not for Franco because it doesn't have the scripting language in there. Although you could, make workarounds to do cross-chain transactions. But one type of contract pair that you can make is, say I send Expanse to an Exodus address on the Expanse blockchain. But then I can use Ethereum to monitor that that Exodus address on Expanse and create Expanse tokens on Ethereum. They wouldn't necessarily be, like they would be. They wouldn't be ethers. They would actually be like a crypto asset that lives on the Ethereum blockchain that represents Expanse coins.
Right. So you could make an Expanse derivative on Ethereum, basically,
Yes,
and then the contract would accept that would pay out Expanse at some point automatically, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now, for instance, I could send Expanse to the Ethereum blockchain. They could transfer amongst themselves. The users could transfer it amongst themselves on there, and then they could send it to an Exodus address on the Ethereum blockchain that unlocks them on the contract in Expanse, and then send them from Expanse to the user that they wanted to send them to over here. So you could definitely easily do cross-chain transactions between things like, between the Ethereum forks, definitely. Between something like Bitcoin or Franco and Expanse and Ethereum, it becomes a little more tedious. You can always do it one way. You could go from Franco to Expanse easily. I mean, a couple lines of code you can do this. Going from Expanse back into Franco, that becomes a little harder because you have to do because Franco and Bitcoin doesn't actually have a really robust scripting language, so you're going to have to do a lot of tweaks and a lot of hacks, and I mean that was kind of like counterparty kind of stuff. You might could do it with counterparty. I haven't really delved into it, but
all right, great.
It's possible. It's just
that's interesting. You brought up counterparty because I thought supposedly you can write counterparty in 3 lines of code with Ethereum. And you could do Namecoin.
That was the saying. That's what they said.
Right. Well, you can do Namecoin in 2 lines and counterparty in 3 lines, and I guess Litecoin is three characters. I don't know. I mean, what is that? Can you really do all that, or was that just kind of like theoretically? Okay.
Yeah, you can do a lot with it, man. Like the Ethereum scripting language is pretty powerful, man. It's awesome. I mean, it gets me excited when I look at it. When I start postulating on the things that I can do with it, it just becomes mind blowing.
Okay,
so,
great.
Yeah, you really can do this.
How do we get into it? How do we start? Let's say that I'm not really a big coder necessarily, but I really like the ideas of DAO and smart contracts and stuff like that. What do I do?
Yeah,
how do I do all this?
I'm actually pondering that idea because right now it seems like it's mostly the software, mostly Ethereum and that sort of software, and Expanse is it's definitely hard. I guess is the word, and it's difficult, man. It's not really easy, but I know Expanse, we're creating tools that make it easier to use. We're going to be making things like, for instance, our GUI wallet that Dan Conway is working on is absolutely beautiful. And right now, all it does is, it loads up, talks to the blockchain. You can send transactions and stuff. But the next iteration we're going to try and implement things like graphical templates for smart contracts. For instance, you could click a button and it says start your DAO, and then you would input some variables, and it would automatically generate this script for you and launch it on the blockchain for you. And that's definitely within the future. Right now, we're not at that point, although there are third-party software and third-party services that are trying to implement that sort of thing. But we're just not right there yet. We'll be there, but just not there yet.
Okay, great. Well, it's an interesting thing. How are you going to make it so, quote, normal people or semi-normal people can try to use it, right? That's going to be, if it's hard for us, then it's going to be really hard for anyone outside of the crypto world to even, start using it at all, I think. But
absolutely,
I think it's pretty interesting what you're doing. Okay, well, we're coming to the end. Do you have any final words? And tell us, how can we get involved with the Expanse project and ask you guys questions and bring our ideas into it?
Yeah, man. The most active place for us right now is our Slack chat. And you can join that automatically by going to slack.expanse.tech. So it's .tech tech. And we also have a forum, so it's forum.expanse.tech, and our website is obviously www.expanse.tech. And we have a Twitter account, we have Facebook, I mean, we have a Reddit. You can pretty much contact us any way possible, and we would definitely like your help. We would like to help you also. So, yep.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you for coming on today. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. Make sure to subscribe to the World Crypto Network. Give us a thumbs up. Also, I want to our sponsor for this episode, eCoin. Make sure to check it out, ecoin.io. You can get a cool credit card and you can load it with Bitcoin and use it anywhere a credit card is accepted. Thanks a lot for watching, and talk to you next time.
See ya.